From time to time, a state must show its teeth and remind everyone that it is dangerous, because that is the alternative to being weak. Military might, whether by parades, exercises, or arms deals, is the most common show of strength. Defense spending, therefore, is more than just about numbers. It displays political commitment. China's defense budget for 2023 is estimated at $230 billion, but it is dwarfed by that of the United States, which sits at $816 billion. That is a substantial gap, but the numbers don't add up. China's official spending does not include its paramilitary forces, Coast Guard, research and development programs, space program, or any other related activities. When adjusted for exchange rates, purchasing power, and labor costs, China's defense budget equals 87% of the Pentagon's budget. That is the 2017 estimate. For 2023, it is likely even higher now. Suddenly, the gap between America and China doesn't seem as substantial as previously believed. What's more, while America spends its defense resources all across the globe, China focuses its assets primarily in its vicinity. So Beijing gets a lot more bang for its buck. These are the underlying, unspoken factors that have many U.S. military officials spooked. What exactly is China looking to do with its increased military might? Well, that much is less a secret. It wants to dominate the space up to the first island chain, and it wants to accomplish that by 2030. The first island chain runs from Japan to the Philippines to Indonesia. Right at the center, like a thorn in the eye, sits Taiwan. Beijing is looking to bring its renegade province under control by force if necessary. China has acquired advanced submarines, aircraft carriers, fifth-generation jets, and other military assets for that mission. With China arming itself at breakneck pace, war is closer now than it has been in many decades, according to U.S. officials. Beijing is pursuing its objectives with specific deadlines in mind, one of them being 2024, which is an election year in both the United States and Taiwan. The belief is that the elections will be polarizing and disruptive, especially in America. Plus, by 2024, Taiwanese officials believe the Chinese military will have gathered enough firepower and air power to give the invasion a go. This then makes 2025 an ideal time for Beijing to move offensively, the argument goes. Still, armed lived in 2 years is a bold prediction to make. A lot of questions remain unaddressed. The one thing we know fairly certain is that should America and China come to a fight within the next decade, neither side would target the other's mainland for a direct assault. China is too big in size and population for a land war, and the United States is too far away for a large-scale attack. Much sooner, the state of play would be Taiwan, the South China Sea, and the East China Sea. Beijing's primary vulnerability, its Achilles heel, is the chain of islands and archipelagos surrounding it and isolating its mainland from the oceans. The South China Sea holds narrow passages into the Indian and Pacific Oceans. Luzon, Mindanao, Borneo, Jaffa, and Sumatra make up the frame of the chain, while the space in between is dotted with random islands. Any of these territories can house and conceal air and missile forces, friendly or hostile. The same is true in the East China Sea. The islands running from Japan to Ryukyu to Taiwan stand as sentries looking out into the sea. The moment Chinese warships depart their ports, they would be visible to Japanese and Taiwanese surveillance and well within the range of air and missile systems. Looking at the map, you get an idea of the stakes. China is a trading power. It has the highest share of global exports of goods, yet it does not have guaranteed access to the world's oceans. The first island chain contains China's power projection, placing its vast economic empire at the mercy of the world's leading naval power. For Beijing, business as usual is not a sustainable formula. The choke points between the islands and the archipelagos can be closed by U.S. carrier battle groups with relative ease. Malacca, Sunda, Lombok, Karamata, Makassar, Mindoro, and Luzon are all susceptible to naval blockades. Should that happen, specifically in the Malacca Strait, it would choke China's economy, which in turn would harm the Communist Party's grip on power. If within the next decade Washington and Beijing were to come to a blow, both would look to dominate the islands and archipelagos that make up the first island chain. In the South China Sea, the U.S. Navy's mission would be to close the choke points and keep them closed. The PLA Navy stands no chance against the U.S. Navy, not within the next decade at least. So rather than fight the American fleets head-on, the PLA Navy would seek to occupy some of the islands in the vicinity and hold on long enough to place air, land, and anti-ship missile systems on the islands. Once the new weapons are in place, Chinese forces could then push away the American fleets from the choke points they've located. Doing so would allow China to establish guaranteed passages to the world's oceans. This is precisely why China has invested so much in the artificial islands in the South China Sea. As of this writing, Beijing has fully militarized 3 of its 7 artificial islands: Mischief Reef, Subi Reef, and Fiery Cross. They serve as unsinkable aircraft carriers, each armed with anti-ship and anti-aircraft missile systems, laser and jamming equipment, as well as fighter jets. Since the PLA Navy cannot directly open the choke points in the South China Sea, it can instead use air and missile systems found on the artificial islands to augment its firepower. Meanwhile, in the East China Sea, the tactical situation is slightly different, but no less urgent. The UQ Islands and Taiwan split the PLA Navy fleets in 2. The northern and eastern fleets operate in a separate command area from the southern fleet. So, in wartime, China's immediate goal would be to secure the Taiwan Strait and allow its fleets to merge and bring reinforcements as needed. Taking Taiwan, or at least incapacitating its armed forces, would resolve China's divided naval forces. More importantly, controlling Taiwan would allow China to poke through the first island chain and secure access to the world's oceans. So in an armed conflict between China and America, we would see the former using anti-ship, air, and land-based missile systems to keep the U.S. Navy away from the choke points in the first island chain, including Taiwan. That sounds like a doable plan. The problem is that China's missiles are vulnerable to U.S. air and missile interception. So however one looks at it, China is powerless against the United States, at least for the next decade. It stands to reason that Beijing would not initiate conflict while being at a disadvantage. Looking beyond from 2030 onwards, 5th-generation jets and hypersonic missiles could change the equation. That's when things get dangerous. China has the J-20 Mighty Dragon, while America has the F-35 Lightning II. For what it's worth, the F-35 is the better weapon, and American pilots are better trained than their Chinese counterparts. Plus, America has a host of regional allies, including Japan, South Korea, Australia, Thailand, Taiwan, the Philippines, and so on. On the other side, though, China is presumed to be ahead in hypersonic weaponry. It is also enhancing and expanding its armed forces faster than anyone else, including the commissioning of aircraft carriers. Going at the current rate of development, China is expected to have reformed its military into a world-class fighting force on par with the United States by 2050. By then, the PLA Navy and the U.S. Navy will have nearly the same gross tonnage in ships and almost the same number of aircraft carriers. The bottom line is that an American-Chinese war is unlikely in the next decade, but the weather forecast is looking rather tempestuous. Storm clouds are gathering in the distance.
Thank you for watching, and please subscribe to our channel Pouring Knowledge for more videos like these.